Hey everybody, what's going on? So today in this video, I'm going to be making a video talking about jigs and a couple money saving and time saving ways you can fish them. So I actually had this video made yesterday. I was going to post it, which would be today, which by the time you guys are watching it, it'll be yesterday. Very confusing. But I had this video made, I think it was Wednesday. Or no, I had this video made Thursday. I was going to post on Friday. Didn't get to post on Friday, so I'm going to post this on Saturday. Yeah. But hopefully, I'll be able to get this video out and up on the YouTube so you guys will be watching it. And I had it made the other day, and it was really good. I actually really liked it. But I went to take a picture of a fish, and deleted it. So, awesome. But, whatever. Stuff happens, and that's just something we have to deal with. So we're going to talk about jigs. We're going to talk about swim jigs, football jigs, finesse jigs, micro jigs, and some other things as well. So first thing we're going to talk about is the bigger of the two, or the bigger of the three, I guess you could say, and that is the swim jig. Swim jig is getting very popular in the past few years, and something that I do with my swim jig is I will trim up the skirt a little bit. Now, originally, this skirt was probably a good maybe quarter inch longer than it is now. And what I did is I just trimmed it up a tad bit. Now, another really good time-saving tip is as this here is a Strike King swim jig, and Strike King swim jigs are bad about it. Now, I've not used very many other swim jigs. I only have Strike King and 6 cent swim jigs. But the Strike Kings have been worse about it than the 6 cents. I got the Strike King, I got this one here about a week before I got the 6 cent swim jigs, and these here still are the Strike King. This one here has lost both eyes. The 6 cent swim jig both have still have the same eyes. So if one of your eyes on your swim jig does fall out, just take the other one off. That is a very good tip, because a lot of the time when one eye falls out, the swim jig will want to swim sideways. It'll swim as it goes through the water. It'll swim like this instead of upright. That's bad. You don't want that. Can you still get bit doing that? Yes, you can. I'm not even going to lie about it. You can. I've done it. But it will save you a little bit of time, and it'll look a little bit more natural if it's swimming straight and not sideways. That's just my opinion. Something else I'll do is I will trim up the skirt like I said. But trailer, something that I have done with this trailer is this is a Smoke Shad swim jig, but I put a green pumpkin trailer. Now this trailer is a new swim bait made by me here at Doc's Lure Company. It is called the Gunner swim bait. There it is. There, this color here is black, blue, silver. It's 3.5 inches. Comes in a $4 a pack, and there's 8 in each pack. And these things are a lot different. Do I have the 4-inch swim bait up here? No, I don't. But if I did, I would show it to you. But it has a lot different action than the 4-inch. The original 4-inch swim bait that I make, I still make it. I'm not going to stop making it. I'm going to keep going with all my baits that I make. But the difference between this tail and the other one is the other one has more of a very finesse, kind of a light twist to it. It kind of twists, not really hard kicks. That's where this one comes in. It has a very hard thumping kick, and it gets bit a lot. I've had a lot of them get bites. Just today, I went outside and was slow rolling one on a chatterbait, and had, like, I think all but the hook was got by this thing. I mean, it ripped skirt out. It ripped part of the bait off. It was a very mean fish, and I had him hooked for just a second, and he got off that quick. He tore up the skirt on the swim jig, or the chatterbait, and chatterbait is nearly useless at this point. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the skirt off and just put swim baits on it. Just use it as like a naked swim jig, or a chatterbait. So I think that'll work. But this thing has a crazy hard thumping action. You guys can see that tail is just kicking back and forth, just sitting there, has a very wide thump on it, and it's really good bait. 8-pack for $4, pretty good deal. But I have a green pumpkin one on here. Looks really good in the water. And something else I will do with this is I will not trim all the skirts the same length. That's something that I see a lot of people do. A lot of people will take their jig and they'll set it like this and they'll cut it even. I don't do that, because have you ever seen a shad that has a even straight cut tail. I know I haven't. I've never seen a bluegill with it either. I've never seen a small baby bass like that. I've never seen anything like that. There's no fish that I can think of that has just a straight cut off tail. That's where this little length, I leave it a little bit long in some areas. You guys can see it's a little bit shorter here. It's a little bit longer right here. I will leave it like that because it looks more natural. It's not perfect. That's, it's not perfect. You don't want your jig to look perfect to a fish, because if it looks perfect, it'll be too good to be true. And that fish will be like, nah, that looks a little bit too fishy. It looks just a little bit too weird if it's fresh, like straight cut. But if it's a little bit in different lengths, now I'm not saying cut here and leave this long. No, don't do that. That'll just look stupid. But leave like a tiny little bit, not even a 1/4 inch, even shorter than a 1/4 inch of, some of them long and some of them shorter. And that helps a lot. Something I will do, you guys can see here, this has more of a greenish gray up here and it has some orange on the belly. I'll usually leave the orange ones longer because it'll give it more of a profound look. And that's something I will do all the time. Something else I'll do if I'm throwing a bigger trailer, if I'm going for a big fish, if I'm going for a 10-pound bass or muskie even, trailer hooks. You need a trailer hook. Right, actually, no, I put that up. I had a trailer hook back there behind the camera, but I don't have it now because I put it up earlier today. But a trailer hook is key for swim jigs. Now, something I do with swim jigs is I will always buy heavy cover swim jigs. Even if I'm fishing open water, if I'm fishing 10 feet down and no grass, just maybe a little bit of sticks or something, I will still fish that heavy cover because you never know when that weed guard is going to come into contact with something, especially if you're at a place you've never fished before. That weed guard can save you a lot of money. So, something else that I will do, this kind of goes in with both football jigs and swim jigs because you do it with both. So as you can see, this jig right here is not a normal swim jig. It's green pumpkin purple Arky style little flat top jig right there. Now, a lot of people don't throw swim baits on these. A lot of people will throw a crawl bait on them. I do it. I do it sometimes, but something I've learned here recently is if you put a swim bait on it, it gives the fish a little bit of different, something different to see. You go out on a lake that is famous for jig fishing and you see a bunch of people out throwing a jig in 20 foot of water. All of a sudden you're sitting there in 20 foot of water and you got a football jig with a swim bait on the back of it. That's something the fish probably have never seen. The fish are used to seeing a crawl bait just sitting there flailing around, or they're used to seeing a dead action bait. They're not used to seeing a little paddle tail that's just kind of going like this in the water. They're not used to seeing that. Something else I like doing with these is I like to get the heaviest skirt count I can. If you're buying some from a place where you can get different skirt counts, some places like this skirt here or this jig here, I bought it from a place on eBay where you can pick different skirt counts. You can pick 44, 55, and 66. That counts the number of strands that go all the way around. Now it looks like there's more than 66 strands there, right? Because there really is. Because there's 66 each individual pieces. That piece there, there's 2 pieces right there. You see, each piece is a individual strand that goes through. It's longer. Like the strands are usually about maybe 3 to 4. Some of them even are 6 inches long, and they're longer than you think they are. But what it is you got an inner layer, which is these right here. You guys can see that. And then you got your outer layer, which are these right here. These here are your outer layer. You have your inner layer and your outer layer. That gives your jig a lot of bulk. What I do constantly, I never don't do this. That makes no sense, but just read between the lines here. I don't ever buy a 44 count skirt. I buy the heaviest skirt count I can. The reason why is it goes back to something that I've always been told about deer hunting. When it's cold out and you don't bring enough clothes, you can't put more on because you don't have them. But you can always take more off if you have too much. If you have too much skirt, you can always trim it down. But if you don't have enough skirt, you can't put more on. You just can't. I mean, there's no way that you can just add on an inch of skirt material. That doesn't work. You know, you can't do it. So buy a heavier skirt count, and then you can always trim it down and make it a finesse jig. Make it a leave it the same. I usually leave it the same. I might cut it down just a tad bit for the trailer. That's about it. Something I will do also if I'm fishing tall timber, what I call standing timber, is when you're in the middle of the lake and you see a freaking tree standing up in the middle of it 15 feet, don't go with just a jig with a small crawbait. Don't go with a jig with something like this on it. Go with a jig with a swim bait on it. What it does is it looks like a dying bluegill, because that jig is falling down through the water just like this, and that tail is back there just kicking back and forth, kicking just like this as it going down. What that does is it looks like a dying bluegill. Or let's say you get a swim jig, something like this, or get a white football jig. I know they make those a lot. Get a white football jig with a white swim bait and pitch that in there. Just let it fall real slowly. Slack line, completely slack your line. If you're in 12 feet of water, pull out as much line as you can. Let it go all the way to the bottom. Most of the time, now I'm not going to say all the time, but most of the time that I've fished cover like that with a jig, with a swim bait trailer, the jig almost never makes it to the bottom because the fish will grab it before it gets there. Because it just looks like a very easy, slow-moving meal. And it really is one of my favorite ways of fishing as far as going with a jig. I almost never fish a Texas rig around standing timber. I almost always throw something like this. Most of the time it is this exact same bait, the exact setup. And it works. A lot of people don't think it would, but it does. You know, one of my fish that I caught about, how long back was it? A couple months ago. It was probably a 3.5 pounder. It was a really good fish. I threw this jig, this exact same jig with a Dox Lure Company 4-inch swim bait on it. I pitched it out there by a brush pile. I knew there was this brush pile. So I pitched it out there, pulled out about 10 foot of line, and let that jig just free line. And just fell and fell and fell. Pretty soon it just stopped moving, and I was thinking, okay, it's on bottom. So I start reeling. I keep reeling. I keep reeling. I don't ever feel the jig. I'm like, well, that's weird. And as soon as I literally said that. I said, well, that's weird. And as soon as I said it, I felt just a tick. Set the hook on it. There you go, 3.5 pounder. That's another thing. We'll go right into that too. If you ever are fishing a jig, or really any bait, it kind of goes with any bait. If you are fishing that bait and you give it a little bit of slack line, and all of a sudden when you reel back up to make that bait move again and you don't feel it, and you sit there and you reel up about 2 feet of line and you still don't feel it, reel up as fast as you can. As soon as you feel contact with that bait, set the hook. 99% of the time that fish has grabbed your bait and swam away. It happens a lot around schooling fish. If you have fish that are underneath a bait ball, maybe they're not busted on the surface, you're throwing a swim jig or a crankbait or maybe even just a normal swim bait, and all of a sudden, you're letting that bait fall and you don't have connection to that bait anymore, and you're just sitting there and you're reeling and there's nothing there. As soon as you feel that little bit of a tug, when you feel that bait, set the hook, because most of the time that fish has gotten that bait and swam away from the school to try to eat it. Happens a lot with big swim baits. Happens a lot with stuff like this, a normal little jig. Because if that fish sees that bait and he grabs it, them other fish are going to see that he grabbed that bait and they're going to want it. And if any of you guys have ever had chickens, crazy kind of off topic, but it's about the same thing. If you've ever given popcorn to chickens, if you throw one piece in there, one chicken will grab that piece of popcorn and run. All the other chickens will run right after it. Don't matter how much popcorn you throw right back in that same spot. All them other chickens will run right towards that other one because that other one grabbed it first, and now they want it. Bats are very selfish creatures. It's no other way to say it, but they are. They're selfish creatures, and if one has something, they want it. So they'll chase after it. So if you catch a fish and it ran like crazy away from where you're seeing the activity, there's more fish there for sure, 100%. That's just what I've done. Another thing I've done is flipped in the grass, had them bite, and they pulled me out 10 feet before I set the hook because they're running so fast, they're trying to get away from other fish. I set the hook, pull a fish up, I see a fish underneath of it, swim away. Go back underneath that grass. I flip back in there, catch another one that quick. Back-to-back cast, I've done it. It just happens like that. That's a really good tip right there as well. So we're going to move away from the football jigs and the swim baits on the football jigs. Now we're going to go with black and blue jigs. So a lot of people like throwing black and blue jigs, but I don't see very many people throw a black and blue swim bait on a black and blue jig. And that's something we're going to step into here in a second as well. This is going to save you a lot of time. This is going to save you money. This is going to save you a lot of things. So I normally throw that jig, this black and blue, it's actually black and purple, black and blue jig with a black and blue crawl. That crawl's been through a lot. It's had a lot of bites on it. But I don't see a whole lot of people taking black swim baits. This here's black, blue, silver, Dox Lure Company, Gunner swim bait. I just don't see very many people taking these black swim baits and throwing them on a football jig, just like that. Looks perfect. And something I've noticed that they lack in the lure industry as a whole is black swim baits. You just don't see them. Most of the time, if you're thinking of a black lure, it's either a big worm, a big creature bait, a topwater bait, such as a whopper plopper or something like that, a pop-ar, something like that. That's about it. You don't see very many people talking about black swim baits. Most of the time it's crawls, worms, creature baits, stuff like that. They don't talk about swim baits. But I tell you what, if you're in dirty water and you're throwing this guy right here, black and blue or black and purple jig with a black swim bait, you will catch fish, 100%. Because it has a different vibration than a normal crawl. It looks different than a normal crawl, and it's just going to catch fish. And what you can do with this right here is you can fish it on the bottom, just hop it off the bottom. You can pitch it in the cover, and you can cast out and just swim it real slow just under the surface. You can do all three. You can do everything that any other jig can do with this setup right here. And the black and blue with a black blue silver swim bait will just catch fish. I don't know why, but I've had better luck with black and blue jigs with black swim baits than I have with crawl baits on the back. I don't know why. I threw a black and blue, actually it's that exact jig, with a black, blue, silver, and red 4-inch Dox Lure Company swim bait out one day at my pond, just kind of goofing off. Didn't really have much to do, and I caught a 3.5 pounder. Well, maybe I'll give it 2.5. I don't say it was 3. I'll give it a lower number, and we'll just say it may have been bigger than that. But I caught it on it, just cast it out, let it sink to the bottom, and then just slow rolling it on the bottom. It works. Something else that a lot of people don't really talk about with jigs is slow rolling them on the bottom. Just like I was saying there. I've done that a lot, and I've caught a lot of fish. See, what it does is when it's sitting there going real slowly on the bottom, it's almost like a weedless, well, a little bit more weedless, silent, like this is legitimately completely silent square reel crankbait. You have very little noise. The only real noise you get out of this setup right here is the tail kick. And maybe if you're throwing around rocks, you can get the ticking sound off the head of the bait on the rocks. That's about all the noise you get. It's pretty much the most silent type of square bill you can throw because it's not hard plastic. It's literally just this little thing right here. And as it going across there, it's just going to be really silent, quiet. It's going to look natural. It's not going to be just burrowing down through there, going crazy, squiggling around through the water. It's just a silent, little easy thing to grab. And then bass are going to see that, and they're going to pick it up, and they're going to grab it. And something else that'll help you is if you're throwing it around brush, don't stop a jig in the middle of a brush pile. Stop it on the outside edges. If you're reeling that jig right along the bottom and it hits the brush, don't stop it in the middle of the brush. Hit it right there. As soon as it hits that brush, you stop it and let it sit there for a second. Because what that does is when that bait hits that cover, that jig, that skirt is going to puff. What that gives the illusion of is a injured, confused, dazed baitfish or crawfish or whatever. Whatever you're trying to imitate. It will give that fish a look of, hey, I just ran into this stick, I don't know what to do now. Then that bass is going to nail it because they're opportunistic. If they see that that bait is just shocked and kind of sitting there for a second, that jig skirt is going to sit like this. It's going to be like this, and it's going to like that. As soon as it hits that cover, it's just going to puff open. It's going to sit there for a second. And something I hear a lot of people talk about, mainly the tactical bassing people, they talk about this a lot, is what they call secondary action. When that water, if that fish comes up and swims up to that jig that's sitting there on the bottom, that water motion is going to make these jig skirt move very, very slightly. It's going to look like the pinchers of a crawfish, the little legs. It'll look like the fins on a bluegill. It'll look like the fins on a shad. It'll look like the fins on a baby bass. It doesn't matter. It'll look natural to it. And that's why I absolutely love slow rolling a jig along the bottom, because it is super natural. Basically, the most natural moving bait you can throw is a little jig that's just slow rolling on the bottom. It catches big fish. Okay, so we've talked about those for a little while. Now we're going to go ahead and move into finesse jigs. And we're going to basically just talk about the same stuff we were just talking about, just miniature size. So my top two favorite finesse jigs are the Terminator heavy hook the heavy hook finesse jig. The Strike King finesse jig would be better than this, but honestly, I don't remember where I put it. It's not in the jig box that I had it. I don't remember where it is. So the Strike King finesse jig is a lot better than this because it has a weed guard. This does not have a weed guard. It sticks whatever it hits. I don't like this because of that, but it's decent. It's okay. This here's a 1/2 ounce, just football head, little finesse. And what the difference between a finesse jig and a normal jig is like I was talking about earlier. See how you have your first layer here and your second layer of skirt here? This only has one layer. You see how it comes up and is cut off right at the head? That is a finesse jig. Another finesse jig, this is what I call a micro jig. This is not really a finesse jig, it's more of a micro jig. This is, I think this is a 1/16 ounce little tiny jig. I'm talking very, very small. So we're going to talk, let's look at this, okay? This is a 1/2 ounce tungsten Arky style jig with a 3-inch swim bait. Here it is. Look at this tiny thing. It is a quarter of the size of that jig. It is very small. Look at the head design. The head design is made kind of like a plate, a square plate. Very tiny weed guard, but it is a pretty stiff weed guard. It's good. It's going to keep that brush from getting hooked. Has a very light wire hook. I think this is a 2/0 hook. And has a very nice skirt. This is a Molex jig, I think, but I'm not 100% sure. I got it from Tackle Warehouse, and I don't really remember. But something I'll do with this is I'll either stick a small little 2-inch mud bug on this. Here it looks with that on it. Just kind of holding it beside the jig. That way I don't have to really thread it on there. But something else I'll do. Now this is what I call a finesse swim jig. And I don't believe I've ever seen someone talk about a finesse jig this way. And I've caught fish doing this. I've caught pretty decent fish doing this actually. And I'll do is I'll take this little ultra tiny little jig. Now this more depends on the color of the jig. If you're throwing like a black swim or a little black jig, normally I won't do this with it. To be honest with you, I won't. But if you're throwing a little natural green jig or a white jig, you can do this. That's put a tiny swim bait on that. That's a 2-inch Doc Stewart Company swim bait with this little jig. Look at that. Look at the difference here. Now, if you're in a pond and maybe you're trying to just catch a bunch of fish for fun, if you're trying to get a kid into fishing, whatever, you take this little dude right here, you cast it out. You can throw this on spinning gear. If you do throw it on bait casting gear, I would definitely consider light line, maybe 10-pound test with a medium action rod. But honestly, be 100% like real with you, I wouldn't throw this on bait caster. You can. I'm not going to say that you can't, because you can. I wouldn't. I throw this on my spinning rod with 10-pound test Berkley Trilene. That's what I throw this on. It's a little tiny finesse swim jig. You can sit there and bounce it on the bottom real slow. You can let it swim through the water column and it'll catch fish. So, thank you guys for watching. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. If you like this video, make sure you smash the like button and share this video on all your social medias. And let me know if you guys want me to do more of these videos, and if you have a different bait that you want me to do these videos on. I do have the in-depth episodes going to be coming soon. If you have a bait that you want me to do one of those on, let me know. If you have a video suggestion for one of these type of videos talking about how to customize a certain bait, let me know that as well. Thank you guys for watching.